Life doesn't always give warnings before it builds walls in front of us. Some walls are made of failure, some of doubt, some of betrayal, poverty, fear, or rejection. For Joe Ranga, these walls didn't appear one at a time. They rose all at once, higher and heavier with every step forward. From the outside it may have looked like progress had stopped. But inside, something unbreakable was forming. Every wall Joe faced became a lesson in patience. Every setback became proof that giving up was not an option. While others searched for doors, Joe learned to climb, to break through, and sometimes to stand still until strength returned. Against every wall, Joe chose effort over excuses. When the world said, "Turn back," he said, "One more try." When silence answered his prayers, he answered with discipline. He understood that walls are not built to stop the determined, they exist to reveal who is willing to push long enough. This journey was not about winning quickly. It was about refusing to surrender quietly. Joe Ranga's story reminds us that resilience is not loud, success is not instant, and strength is often invisible until tested. And when the walls finally cracked, it wasn't luck that broke them, it was persistence, belief, and relentless courage. In every meaningful journey, walls are not an exception, they are a certainty. The moment someone commits to growth, purpose, or change, resistance appears. For Joe Ranga, these walls did not come as surprises. They came as constant reminders that nothing valuable is ever handed over easily. The walls showed up in different forms: financial struggles, lack of support, repeated failures, and moments where progress seemed completely blocked. What made these walls powerful was not their size but their timing. They appeared when momentum was building, when confidence was rising, and when belief felt strongest. Each wall forced a pause, demanding reflection, patience, and resilience. Instead of seeing them as signs to stop, Joe recognized them as part of the process, proof that he was moving in the right direction. Walls test commitment more than capability. Talent can open doors, but walls question how badly someone wants to continue when doors are closed. Joe Ranga learned that walls don't discriminate, they confront everyone who dares to move forward. The difference lies in response. While many see walls as final limits, Joe saw them as temporary resistance designed to strengthen resolve. These obstacles shaped discipline, sharpened focus, and hardened determination. They stripped away shortcuts and forced the development of endurance. With every wall faced, Joe's mindset evolved, from frustration to understanding, from fear to readiness. The walls were not there to destroy his path, they were there to prepare him for what lay beyond them. Persistence is not a single dramatic moment of courage. It is the quiet decision to continue when stopping would be easier. For Joe Ranga, persistence became a daily discipline rather than an occasional burst of motivation. Excuses were always available: lack of resources, unfair circumstances, limited support, and repeated setbacks. But none of them were allowed to become reasons to quit. Every time progress slowed, Joe faced a choice: explain the failure or outwork it. He chose effort. While excuses bring temporary comfort, persistence demands accountability. Joe understood that blaming conditions might protect pride, but it would never change outcomes. So instead of asking why things were difficult, he focused on what could still be done, even in small, imperfect steps. Persistence required showing up on days when energy was low and results were invisible. It meant continuing without guarantees, without applause, and often without encouragement. Joe learned that consistency has a compounding effect. What feels insignificant today becomes unstoppable over time. Each small action stacked onto the last, slowly building momentum that excuses could never provide. By rejecting excuses, Joe accepted responsibility for his direction, not his circumstances. This mindset transformed obstacles into challenges and delays into preparation. Persistence became his advantage not because it was easy, but because he refused to let temporary discomfort dictate permanent decisions. True strength is rarely forged in moments of recognition. It is built quietly, far from attention and applause. For Joe Ranga, the most important battles were fought internally, in silence, where no one could see the effort, the doubt, or the discipline required to continue. These unseen moments shaped the foundation of resilience that later defined his journey. Silence forced honesty. Without external validation, Joe had to confront his own weaknesses, fears, and limitations. There were long periods where progress felt invisible and sacrifices went unnoticed. Yet, it was in these moments that consistency mattered most. Every early morning, every late night, and every difficult decision added to a strength that did not depend on recognition. Strength built in silence develops endurance. When praise is absent, motivation must come from purpose. Joe learned to rely on inner commitment rather than external encouragement. This self-driven resolve allowed him to remain steady even when results were delayed and support was minimal. The absence of noise sharpened focus and strengthened patience. Silence also taught control. Without the pressure to perform for others, Joe was free to grow at his own pace, learning from mistakes without fear of judgment. This quiet growth created a depth of strength that could withstand criticism, failure, and uncertainty. What was built silently became unshakable when tested. Failure often arrives disguised as loss, disappointment, or regret, but for Joe Ranga, it became one of the most valuable sources of learning. Each failure carried a lesson that success could never teach. Instead of allowing setbacks to define him, Joe chose to study them, understanding that every misstep revealed something essential about preparation, mindset, or strategy. Rather than reacting with frustration, Joe approached failure with reflection. He asked what went wrong, what could be improved, and what needed to change. This mindset transformed failure from a stopping point into a guide. Every mistake exposed weaknesses that demanded attention, sharpening awareness and strengthening future decisions. Failure also built emotional resilience. Repeated setbacks hardened Joe against fear, reducing the power of disappointment over time. What once felt overwhelming gradually became manageable. Through failure, he learned patience, adaptability, and humility, qualities that ensured growth remained continuous rather than fragile. Most importantly, failure clarified direction. It stripped away illusions and forced alignment with reality. Joe Ranga understood that avoiding failure was impossible, but learning from it was a choice. By accepting failure as a teacher, he turned losses into preparation and setbacks into progress, ensuring that each fall contributed to forward movement rather than retreat. Doubt is persistent. It grows louder when progress is slow and confidence is fragile. For Joe Ranga, doubt was never absent. It followed him through uncertainty, setbacks, and moments of isolation. What set him apart was not the absence of doubt, but the decision to let belief remain stronger and last longer. Belief required constant reinforcement. When external voices questioned his direction, Joe returned to his purpose. When results failed to appear, he leaned on commitment rather than emotion. Doubt spoke in questions: is this worth it? Am I capable? Should I stop? But belief answered through action, showing up again and again despite uncertainty. Belief also demanded courage during loneliness. There were times when no evidence supported the effort and no one else could see the vision. In those moments, Joe learned that belief is not about certainty. It is about trust in the process. Holding on to belief meant continuing even when outcomes were unclear and reassurance was unavailable. Over time, belief became a shield. The longer it endured, the weaker doubt became. Every small achievement reinforced confidence, and every challenge survived strengthened inner conviction. Joe Ranga's journey shows that belief does not need to be loud or perfect. It only needs to endure longer than doubt to shape the future. Progress rarely moves in straight lines, and for Joe Ranga, some of the most important growth happened without immediate results. There were long stretches where effort seemed disconnected from outcomes, where consistency did not produce visible change. These moments tested patience more than skill, forcing trust in the process rather than dependence on quick rewards. Invisible progress builds foundations. While external success remained delayed, internal strength, discipline, and awareness were quietly developing. Joe learned that improvement often occurs beneath the surface. Habits forming, mindset sharpening, resilience increasing, long before results appear. What felt like stagnation was actually preparation. The absence of visible progress can be misleading. It tempts doubt, encourages comparison, and invites frustration. Joe resisted this trap by measuring progress through effort rather than outcomes. Showing up daily, improving small details, and staying committed became proof that movement was happening, even if it couldn't yet be seen. By accepting delayed results, Joe gained endurance. He understood that meaningful achievements require time to mature. When progress finally became visible, it was stable and sustainable because it had been built slowly. This perspective allowed him to stay consistent without losing faith during periods where growth felt hidden. Pressure has a way of uncovering what comfort hides. When circumstances are favorable, character remains untested, but when walls rise, true nature is revealed. For Joe Ranga, obstacles became mirrors, reflecting not just his abilities but his values, patience, and integrity. The walls did not create his character, they exposed it. Every wall demanded a response. Frustration, fear, and exhaustion were natural, but Joe's choices in those moments defined who he was becoming. Instead of reacting impulsively, he learned restraint. Instead of surrendering to bitterness, he chose resilience. Each challenge forced a decision between compromise and commitment, shaping character through action rather than intention. Walls also revealed consistency. It is easy to stay motivated when progress is visible, but character is proven when effort continues despite uncertainty. Joe showed up even when results were absent and recognition was non-existent. This reliability under pressure built trust within himself, strengthening self-respect and inner discipline. Through repeated resistance, Joe discovered depth. The walls stripped away superficial motivation and left only purpose. What remained was determination rooted in principle, not circumstance. These moments of confrontation transformed obstacles into defining experiences, revealing a character capable of endurance, focus, and unwavering resolve. Victory is often misunderstood as a single moment of triumph, but for Joe Ranga, it began much earlier, with a simple but powerful refusal to quit. Long before success became visible, the decision to continue had already been made. When fatigue set in and hope felt distant, quitting appeared as the easiest option, yet it was the one choice Joe consistently denied. Refusing to quit required mental discipline. There were days when motivation disappeared and progress felt meaningless. In those moments, Joe relied on commitment rather than emotion. He understood that emotions change but decisions shape direction. By staying anchored to his purpose, he prevented temporary discomfort from becoming a permanent ending. This refusal also demanded resilience in isolation. Often, no one else could see the struggle or understand the weight of persistence. Support was limited, reassurance rare, and outcomes uncertain. Still, Joe chose endurance. Each time he continued despite exhaustion, confidence quietly grew, reinforcing the belief that perseverance itself was a form of victory. Over time, refusing to quit transformed effort into momentum. What began as survival evolved into strength. Challenges that once felt overwhelming became manageable, and setbacks lost their power. Joe Ranga's journey shows that victory is not defined by how many times one falls, but by the unwavering decision to stand back up and continue forward. Pain is unavoidable on any demanding path, but what gives it meaning is how it is used. For Joe Ranga, pain was never wasted, it was transformed into purpose. Every hardship carried emotional weight, disappointment, exhaustion, self-doubt, and moments of deep frustration. Instead of allowing these experiences to harden him negatively, Joe allowed them to shape clarity and direction. Pain sharpened awareness. It exposed what truly mattered and stripped away distractions that once seemed important. Through struggle, Joe learned what he stood for, what he was willing to sacrifice, and how deeply he was committed to his path. The discomfort forced growth that comfort could never provide, turning suffering into insight. Purpose gave pain direction. Rather than asking why challenges existed, Joe focused on what they were preparing him for. Each difficult experience added depth to his resolve and meaning to his effort. Pain became fuel, strengthening empathy, patience, and understanding, qualities that enriched not only his journey but his mindset. By accepting pain as part of progress, Joe Ranga reclaimed control over it. What once felt like a burden evolved into motivation. Pain no longer slowed him down, it reminded him why he started, pushing him forward with greater intent and focus. Success rarely arrives by chance or luck. It is the outcome of relentless, consistent action. For Joe Ranga, every small effort mattered, and every disciplined choice added to the momentum that eventually led to tangible results. He understood that waiting for perfect conditions or inspiration would only delay progress, so action became the foundation of his journey. Relentless action meant showing up even when results were invisible and motivation was low. It required doing the hard work when no one was watching, when the temptation to quit was strongest. Each task, each repetition, and each challenge met was a building block that compounded over time, gradually creating the conditions for success. Action also demanded courage. It meant stepping into uncertainty repeatedly, risking failure, and persevering despite setbacks. Joe learned that hesitation and overthinking only slow growth, while decisive, consistent effort, even imperfect effort, moves a person closer to their goals. Over time, relentless action transformed discipline into habit. The daily choices that might have seemed insignificant began to accumulate into major breakthroughs. Joe realized that success was not sudden, it was the sum of countless small victories achieved through persistent effort. This understanding turned every challenge into an opportunity to act, reinforcing the principle that results are earned, not given. Fear is a natural reaction to uncertainty, risk, and the unknown, but for Joe Ranga, it was never a reason to halt progress. It was a signal that growth was possible. Every time fear appeared, it marked the edge of his comfort zone and the beginning of opportunity. Joe learned to recognize fear as an indicator of importance rather than an obstacle to avoid. Fear demanded awareness and courage. It highlighted areas where preparation, focus, and determination were necessary. Instead of letting fear paralyze him, Joe approached it as a guide, asking why it existed and how he could respond effectively. Each encounter with fear became a lesson in bravery, teaching him to act despite discomfort rather than wait for it to disappear. Facing fear repeatedly strengthened resilience. Joe discovered that the more he confronted what intimidated him, the less power it held over his decisions. Fear no longer dictated the boundaries of his life. Instead, it became a tool for growth, pushing him toward challenges that built skill, confidence, and character. Ultimately, fear for Joe Ranga was a compass rather than a barrier. It indicated direction, not limitation. By treating fear as a signal rather than a stop sign, he moved forward with intention, understanding that courage is not the absence of fear, but the choice to continue in spite of it. Talent can open doors, but consistency keeps them open and builds paths to success. For Joe Ranga, natural ability alone was never enough. He understood that even the most gifted individuals can falter without regular effort, focus, and follow-through. True progress, he realized, is measured not by bursts of brilliance, but by the steady accumulation of effort over time. Consistency required discipline, patience, and self-control. It meant showing up every day, even when inspiration faded or circumstances were unfavorable. Joe often faced fatigue, distractions, and moments when shortcuts seemed tempting. Yet he chose to remain steadfast, completing tasks fully, practicing skills deliberately, and honoring commitments regardless of external recognition. This relentless repetition built mastery. Each small, repeated action compounded, transforming potential into results. While talent could give a head start, it was consistency that maintained momentum and turned beginnings into achievements. Joe saw consistency as the bridge between vision and reality, ensuring that effort did not dissipate in vain. Consistency also fostered trust, both in himself and from others. By proving that he could be relied upon, Joe reinforced his credibility, strengthened relationships, and created opportunities that talent alone could not produce. Over time, it became clear that success favors those who keep moving, step by step, long after initial motivation has faded. Life is unpredictable, and for Joe Ranga, challenges rarely arrived in neat, manageable packages. Obstacles often came disguised as setbacks, unexpected changes, or disruptions to plans. Rather than resisting or resenting these shifts, Joe embraced adaptability as a critical tool. He recognized that rigidity limits potential, while flexibility transforms difficulty into opportunity. Adaptability required awareness and quick thinking. Joe learned to assess situations honestly, identifying what could be controlled and what could not. By focusing on actionable solutions instead of dwelling on frustration, he turned uncertainty into a chance for creative problem-solving. Each unexpected event became a test of resilience and an opportunity to refine his approach. This flexibility also fostered innovation. When traditional methods failed, Joe experimented, adjusted, and recalibrated. Adaptability allowed him to discover new paths forward, often more effective than the original plan. It turned obstacles into stepping stones, proving that challenges can reveal hidden advantages when approached with an open mind. Moreover, adaptability strengthened mental resilience. Joe learned that change is inevitable, but how one responds determines outcomes. By accepting what cannot be changed while proactively influencing what can, he cultivated a mindset that views difficulty not as an end, but as a gateway to growth, learning, and progress. Dreams remain distant visions without the framework of discipline to transform them into reality. For Joe Ranga, ambition alone was insufficient. It was discipline that connected desire to tangible results. Discipline demanded structure, self-control, and the ability to act consistently, even when emotions or circumstances threatened to derail progress. Discipline meant creating routines that supported growth, regardless of motivation. Joe woke early, prioritized tasks strategically, and committed to practice and preparation daily. Even when the work was tedious, repetitive, or challenging, he maintained focus. Discipline transformed moments of inaction into opportunities for progress, ensuring that each day contributed to his larger goals. It also required sacrifice. Personal comfort, leisure, and instant gratification were often secondary to long-term objectives. Joe understood that consistent, disciplined effort today builds the foundation for tomorrow's achievements. By controlling impulses and staying committed to process over convenience, he steadily narrowed the gap between vision and reality. Beyond productivity, discipline shaped character. It strengthened resilience, patience, and accountability, reinforcing the belief that success is earned, not given. With discipline as his guide, Joe Ranga learned that dreams are not fleeting fantasies. They are achievable outcomes when matched with deliberate, persistent action. Patience is not passive waiting. It is the active endurance required to let effort bear fruit over time. For Joe Ranga, patience became one of the most critical qualities on his journey. While ambition fueled his drive, patience ensured that the work he invested was not wasted in frustration or impulsive decisions. It allowed him to navigate setbacks without abandoning momentum. Patience required trust in the process. Joe often faced periods where progress was slow, results were delayed, and challenges seemed relentless. In these moments, it would have been easy to give up or take shortcuts. Instead, he chose to maintain consistent effort, understanding that meaningful achievements develop gradually and that impatience can undo months of preparation. This quality also tempered his perspective. Patience allowed Joe to see beyond immediate difficulties and focus on long-term gains. It prevented temporary obstacles from overshadowing vision, teaching him that endurance often produces exponential returns. Each act of persistence became more valuable when paired with the ability to wait for results to mature. Moreover, patience fostered resilience and wisdom. By allowing time for learning, reflection, and adjustment, Joe's efforts became more strategic and effective. He understood that every small step accumulates, and that timing is as important as action. In embracing patience, he multiplied the impact of every effort, turning perseverance into sustained progress and quiet strength. Vision is more than a dream. It is a clear picture of what one strives to achieve, a guiding light that directs every decision and action. For Joe Ranga, vision provided purpose and direction amid uncertainty and chaos. It acted as a compass, ensuring that even when progress was slow or challenges were overwhelming, each step taken was aligned with a larger goal. Having vision meant clarity of intention. Joe knew not just what he wanted to achieve but why it mattered. This clarity allowed him to prioritize actions, make difficult choices, and remain focused when distractions threatened to derail him. Vision turned obstacles into checkpoints, setbacks into lessons, and daily effort into meaningful progress. Vision also strengthened resilience. When immediate results were absent, it reminded Joe of the bigger picture, sustaining motivation and patience. It gave him a reason to continue through adversity, turning frustration into determination. Every challenge became an opportunity to move closer to the ultimate objective, rather than a reason to quit. Finally, vision shaped decision-making. It provided a framework for evaluating opportunities, risks, and strategies, ensuring that actions were intentional rather than reactive. For Joe Ranga, vision was not static. It evolved with experience, insight, and growth, but it remained the central force guiding every step, ensuring that effort was never wasted and that progress, however gradual, moved consistently toward success. Every meaningful journey demands sacrifice, and for Joe Ranga, the willingness to give up comfort, convenience, and immediate gratification became a cornerstone of his success. Sacrifice is often misunderstood as loss, but in reality, it is an investment in a larger goal. Each choice to endure discomfort or forego pleasure strengthened his commitment and clarified priorities. Sacrifice required discipline and foresight. Joe understood that short-term desires, if indulged without consideration, could undermine long-term objectives. Missing social events, working late hours, and dedicating time to practice or strategy were not burdens. They were deliberate steps toward building a future that aligned with his vision. Each act of self-denial reinforced his determination. It also tested resolve. Sacrifice is rarely comfortable or easy, and it often comes with doubt, criticism, or questioning from others. Joe faced moments where the path he chose seemed lonely, and the rewards distant. Yet, by holding fast to his priorities, he reinforced resilience and learned to find strength in commitment itself, rather than in immediate validation or reward. Furthermore, sacrifice cultivated patience and perspective. By consistently choosing what mattered most over what felt easiest, Joe developed clarity about his goals, discernment about opportunities, and the ability to delay gratification without losing motivation. Sacrifice became a silent engine, fueling persistence, focus, and unwavering commitment to the journey he had chosen. Courage is often mistaken for the absence of fear, but for Joe Ranga, true courage meant moving forward even when fear was present. Fear is a natural human response to risk, uncertainty, and the unknown, and it often signals that one is stepping beyond comfort zones. Courage, then, is not the elimination of fear but the decision to act in spite of it. For Joe, courage was both mental and physical. It required confronting challenges head-on, making difficult decisions and accepting the possibility of failure. Each courageous act demanded trust in his own abilities and in the process, even when outcomes were uncertain or the path forward was unclear. Fear became a signal of growth rather than a reason to retreat. Courage also meant persistence in the face of criticism and doubt. Joe encountered moments where others questioned his vision, laughed at his efforts, or doubted his capacity. True bravery, he realized, was not performing in front of an audience but standing firm in solitude, making choices aligned with purpose despite external pressures. Moreover, courage reinforced confidence and resilience. Each act of bravery, no matter how small, strengthened his ability to face the next challenge. Courage became cumulative, building an inner foundation that allowed Joe Ranga to approach adversity with composure and determination, turning fear into a catalyst for action rather than a barrier to success. Inspiration is fleeting, it comes and goes like a spark, but hard work endures. For Joe Ranga, relying solely on motivation or moments of inspiration would have been a fragile approach to achieving greatness. He understood that lasting success is built on consistent, disciplined effort, not occasional bursts of enthusiasm. Hard work required routine, focus, and persistence. Joe showed up day after day, performing tasks that were often tedious, challenging, or unglamorous. Even when inspiration was absent, he maintained momentum, knowing that results are the accumulation of small, repeated actions rather than sudden, extraordinary events. It also demanded humility. Hard work often happens in silence, without recognition or immediate reward. Joe embraced the grind, understanding that effort invested consistently compounds over time, even if unseen. Each completed task, each hour dedicated, each challenge overcome, was a building block toward larger achievements. Furthermore, hard work strengthened resilience and character. Facing difficulties head-on through effort, rather than waiting for inspiration to strike, taught patience, adaptability, and self-reliance. Joe Ranga's journey demonstrates that while inspiration may ignite the initial spark, it is relentless hard work that sustains progress, overcomes obstacles, and ultimately creates lasting success. True legacy is not measured by applause, awards, or public acknowledgement, it is measured by the lasting impact of one's actions. For Joe Ranga, the goal was never to seek recognition, but to create value, inspire others, and leave a meaningful mark on the world. He understood that legacy is cultivated through consistent effort, integrity, and contribution, rather than through fleeting fame. Building a legacy required focus on long-term influence rather than short-term gratification. Joe made decisions that prioritized sustainable growth, ethical behavior, and meaningful outcomes. Every action, whether seen or unseen, contributed to a foundation that would endure beyond immediate visibility. This mindset allowed him to remain committed even when external validation was absent. Legacy also demanded responsibility. Joe recognized that his choices affected not only his own path but also those around him. By striving to lead with example, help others, and elevate his community, he ensured that the fruits of his effort extended beyond personal gain. Each sacrifice, each challenge overcome, and each lesson learned became part of a cumulative impact that shaped lives. Furthermore, legacy is strengthened through perseverance and consistency. It is not created in a single moment but through years of dedication, resilience, and intentional action. Joe Ranga's story illustrates that true success is inseparable from the difference one leaves behind. Lasting influence comes from purposeful effort, unwavering commitment, and the courage to make a positive impact, whether or not it is immediately recognized. Responsibility is often seen as a burden, but for Joe Ranga, it became the pathway to true freedom. By taking full ownership of his actions, decisions, and outcomes, he gained control over his life in a way that excuses or blame could never provide. Responsibility empowered him to shape his destiny, rather than be shaped by circumstance. Accepting responsibility required honesty and self-awareness. Joe examined his choices, acknowledged mistakes, and evaluated outcomes without shifting blame. This level of accountability built trust in himself, sharpened decision-making, and reinforced discipline, creating a foundation on which meaningful progress could be made. Responsibility also expanded his influence. By being accountable for his commitments, Joe earned respect and reliability from others. People could depend on him, partnerships thrived, and opportunities multiplied, not because of chance but because his actions demonstrated integrity and consistency. Moreover, responsibility transformed setbacks into lessons. Instead of seeing obstacles as unfair or blaming external factors, Joe analyzed situations objectively, learning from failures and adjusting strategies. This mindset turned every challenge into a chance for growth and made freedom, the ability to act deliberately, pursue goals, and live with purpose, possible through ownership of his own life. Gratitude is often underestimated, but for Joe Ranga, it became a vital source of inner strength. Recognizing and appreciating the opportunities, lessons, and support along the way created a mindset that fueled resilience, optimism, and perseverance. Gratitude transformed challenges from burdens into stepping stones and setbacks into lessons to learn from. Practicing gratitude required awareness. Joe deliberately reflected on the progress he had made, the people who believed in him, and the resources he had access to, no matter how limited they seemed. By focusing on what he had rather than what he lacked, he cultivated contentment that coexisted with ambition, allowing him to pursue goals with clarity and purpose rather than frustration or envy. Gratitude also fostered mental resilience. In moments of difficulty, recognizing the positives prevented despair from taking root. Instead of dwelling on obstacles, Joe trained his mind to see opportunities, lessons, and moments of growth. This perspective created emotional stability and allowed him to maintain effort and focus even during the most challenging times. Furthermore, gratitude strengthened relationships and influence. By appreciating mentors, allies, and even competitors who pushed him to grow, Joe built trust, loyalty, and collaboration. Gratitude became a multiplier of strength. It not only enhanced his mindset but also amplified the positive impact he could have on the people and world around him. Experience alone does not guarantee growth. It is reflection that transforms events into wisdom. For Joe Ranga, taking the time to pause, analyze, and learn from every victory and setback was a critical practice that elevated his journey from mere effort to purposeful mastery. Reflection allowed him to extract lessons, identify patterns, and make more informed decisions moving forward. Reflection required honesty and self-awareness. Joe examined his successes without becoming complacent and evaluated failures without falling into self-criticism. By asking the right questions, what worked, what didn't, and why, he could apply insight to future challenges, ensuring that every action contributed to long-term improvement rather than being a wasted experience. Through reflection, Joe cultivated foresight. By looking back thoughtfully, he could anticipate obstacles, recognize opportunities earlier, and adjust strategies before issues became larger. This practice turned reactive decision-making into proactive leadership, allowing him to navigate life's complexities with greater confidence and precision. Moreover, reflection deepened resilience and perspective. Revisiting past struggles reminded Joe how far he had come, reinforcing belief in his ability to overcome future challenges. It also highlighted the value of patience, persistence, and strategic effort, showing that wisdom grows not from what happens to us, but from how we process and learn from what happens. Joe Ranga's journey is a testament to the power of resilience, discipline, and unwavering determination. Every wall he faced, every setback he endured, and every fear he confronted shaped him into a person capable of achieving greatness, not by luck, talent, or fleeting inspiration, but by relentless effort, belief, and purpose. His story teaches us that obstacles are not the end of the road. They are opportunities to grow, learn, and reveal our true character. Success is not instant, and victory is not guaranteed, but persistence, courage, and disciplined action turn challenges into stepping stones toward achievement. Ultimately, Joe Ranga reminds us that life will test us repeatedly, but the measure of a person is not how easily they avoid struggle, but how steadfastly they continue in spite of it. When we face life's walls with courage, patience, and relentless effort, we do more than survive. We rise, we inspire, and we create a legacy that endures.